Well, first, I want to say welcome, everybody, and thank you for your participation. This is going to be our first of a few town halls to discuss three millage renewals that are going to be appearing on the August primary ballot. I want to say a couple of things before I turn it over to Crystal Van Vleck, our Director of Special Projects and Strategic Planning. And one thing that I want to say is that it's very, very important that our residents and business owners know how much we appreciate them and all of the support that they provide for us. These three millage renewals, one of them is a public safety millage renewal. The other one is a library millage renewal. And then the other one is a recreation millage renewal. All three of these contribute to the high quality of life and high quality standards that we have here in the city of Oak Park. Last thing I want to say before I turn it over, these are straight renewals. These are not tax increases. These would simply maintain the status quo with your taxes. And it's important to know that since 2016, the overall tax rate for the city is about just over 2 mils less today than it was in 2016. So we're very proud of that. And, you know, obviously continuing to provide great services while we're charging you less is always a good thing. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Crystal Van Vleck, our Director of Strategic Planning and Special Projects, to go through a brief presentation. And I think, Crystal, are we leaving time at the end for questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to start by sharing my screen. This always takes a second. But as the city manager stated, this town hall is intended to be an informational session on the three millage renewals that we have on the August 4th ballot. And just to repeat, one is our public safety millage renewal, one is a recreation millage renewal, and the other a library millage renewal. To get started, we're going to talk a little bit about what each of these millage renewals are, and then we'll get into why they're important. So to kick it off, I'm going to turn it over to our Public Safety Director, Steve Cooper, to talk a little bit about the public safety millage and what it is.
Thank you, Crystal. And again, good evening, everyone who's joining in with us. And just to reiterate, like the city manager stated, the public safety millage renewal is not a tax increase. The millage renewal is 0.9599 mils for 10 years, which equates to 0.959 per $1,000 in taxable value. So in 2010, our residents approved a 10-year millage levy of 1 mil to support public safety operations, equipment, and personnel. Without the renewal, the millage actually would expire on July 1st, 2020's property tax bill. Over the last 10 years, this millage has helped the city make significant and meaningful investments in the public safety department. For instance, some important initiatives like our community policing, including our community resource officers, our Citizens Academy, our annual public safety open house, as well as important investments in equipment like our ballistic vests that protect our officers on a daily basis, and some fire truck maintenance, just to name a few. If the millage is not renewed, the city will lose an estimated $500,000 annually dedicated to public safety operations, equipment, and personnel. And again, the public safety millage renewal is not a tax increase, it's just a renewal.
All right, thank you, Director Cooper. And up next, I'm going to introduce our Recreation Director, Lori Stasiak, to talk a little bit about our recreation millage renewal.
Thank you, Crystal. And good evening, everyone. The second millage renewal on the ballot is the recreation millage. This is also a renewal and not a tax increase. In 2010, residents also passed a 10-year millage of 0.5 mils to fund personnel, equipment, and operations of the recreation department. Without the renewal, the millage also expires after the July 1st, 2020 property tax bill. The renewal is for the current 0.4799 mils for 10 years. This millage has helped fund some of the recreation amenities the community has come to know and love, including Summer Blast, the 4th of July Parade and Fun Fest, concerts in the park, Boo Bash, and Winterfest, as well as recreation programming for residents, including many of our senior programs, youth summer camps and athletics, and the community pool. If the millage is not renewed, the city will lose an estimated $250,000 of revenue annually dedicated to recreation operations and programs.
Thank you, Lori. And last, I'm going to introduce our newer library director, Ms. Karen White Owens, to talk a little bit about our library millage renewal and what that is.
Oh, she's on mute.
There you go. There you go.
Now I'm a person. Good afternoon. Thank everybody for coming. And the third millage is the renewal of the ballot, on the ballot, excuse me, is the library millage renewal. Just like the others, it is a renewal, not a tax increase. In 2010, residents also approved a 10-year millage of 0.5% mill to fund personnel, equipment, and operations of the library. Without the renewal, the millage expires after the July 1, 2020 property tax bill. The renewal is for the current 0.4799 mills for 10 years. The millage helps fund the many library programs and amenities offered over the years, including Sunday concerts, adult computer classes, movie nights, game nights, story time, the public computer lab, the teen center, and the always expanding collection of literature. If the millage is not renewed, the city will lose an estimated $250,000 of revenue annually that is dedicated to funding the library operations, programs, and personnel.
All right, thank you, Karen. So now that we've talked about the history of the millages and what they fund, now we're going to focus a little bit on why these renewals are important. And in order to explain the importance of these renewals, we should first give a brief explanation of the relationship between property taxes, taxable value, and the city's millage rate. While this might be a little dry, we're hoping to be informative about why these millages are important. First of all, the main source of revenue to the city is property taxes. They make up 60% of the city's revenue, and that's why they're so important. So how are they calculated? Every property owner in the city pays property taxes based on two things: the taxable value of the property multiplied by the millage rate. The millage rate means the total of all millages in effect in the city. So for instance, these millages that we're discussing today are three of the city's millages that make up the total city millage rate. The second part of the equation is your taxable value. Taxable value of a newly purchased property is approximately 50% of your property's market value, approximately. So an example tax bill is a house with a $200,000 property value has an estimated taxable value of $100,000. With the city's current total millage rate of 34.5, you would multiply the rate by the taxable value and then divide that by 1,000 to determine the total amount of property taxes owed. So in this scenario, it's $3,450. So this is how we calculate the amount of property taxes owed to the city from one property. The millage rate is basically the only thing in this equation that the city really has any control over, and typically only with voter approval. Taxable value of existing property in the city is basically out of our control, which leads us to the next slide, the city's total taxable value and the revenue that it generates. The amount of property tax revenue the city brings in annually is found by multiplying the city's total taxable value by the current millage rate. So in the last slide, we calculated the property taxes of one property, but to find the city's total taxable value, you would add up all the taxable value of property in the city. When the Great Recession came through and slashed property values and therefore taxable values, the city took a huge hit in the amount of revenue coming in from property taxes, which remember is 60% of our revenue. What the graph that you're looking at indicates is revenue generated from one mill over the years. So this is an easy standard that we use to show how the city's total taxable value has changed over the years and how it relates to the revenue that it generates. In 2008, on the left-hand side of the graph, before the recession, the total taxable value for the city was $728 million. That means that one mill brought in $728,000. But when the effects of the Great Recession finally hit in 2014, which was the worst year for us, the total taxable value of the city decreased by $300 million. And one mill then only brought in $432,000, which is a 40% decline from 2008. So while we've seen a slow increase in taxable value, we've not come close to where we were before the recession hit. You can see on the right-hand side, taxable value, which is currently $522 million, is still only 70% of what it was in 2008. So that means that one mill only brings in 70% of the revenue that it generated in 2008. It's a common misconception that since property values have almost made a full comeback, so would taxable value, but that's untrue because the state limits the amount of revenue growth realized by the city. Through the Headley Amendment and Proposal A, you may have heard about these two things. The growth of taxable value of existing property is limited to the rate of inflation, or 5%, whichever is less. So while property owners have seen their market values make a comeback, which is great, their taxable values have not increased much since the recession hit. In 2008, oopsies, hold on. Sorry about that. All right. Okay. In 2008, when the Great Recession hit, and the taxable value was high, in 2008, before we saw the effects of the Great Recession, taxable value was high and the city was able to operate on fewer mills because each mill brought in significantly more money. These millages that we're discussing today were originally voted on 10 years ago when taxable value started to decline. And that's how the city has been able to continue its excellent services even when taxable value decreased. Additionally, the city has experienced significant revenue loss over the years due to the decrease in state revenue sharing. As you can see in this chart, in 2001, on the very left-hand side, Oak Park received $5 million in state revenue sharing, but that amount has greatly decreased over the years. Last year, the city received $3.5 million, and this year, the city only received $3 million. Since 2002, the city has lost over $23 million in state revenue sharing. Now, it is important to note that one of the reasons for such the very low number this year is that the COVID pandemic had an effect on state revenues, which is affected then our revenue sharing. While the city has had its struggles, we have found new sources, while the city has struggled to find new sources of revenue, we're also facing other challenges. The costs associated with our long-term liabilities, including our pensions and retiree healthcare, are rising faster than our revenues. The city has worked hard over the years to cut costs and find savings. Some of these include citywide hiring freezes, refinancing of debt, which has resulted in millions of dollars in savings for taxpayers, and a decreased millage rate. We've increased the pension contributions for employees. Retiree healthcare and pensions have been eliminated for general employees. We've reduced healthcare costs, including a comprehensive wellness program and a clinic for employees. The creation of an economic development department has brought in new development and tax dollars to the city. We've actively solicited grants and sponsorships to offset the cost of new city programs and amenities. And we furloughed a good amount of employees during the pandemic. So while we have experienced obstacles over the years, we're also trying to do our part in cutting costs so that we can still offer the amenities and the services that residents deserve while combating the obstacles in our way. So this is probably one of the most important slides to residents. Now that we've discussed what the millages are and why they're so important, I think now it's time to take a look at what this means for you as a resident. First, we can't stress enough that these are both all three of these are millage renewals. They will not result in a millage increase. They're just a continuation of current mills being levied. Even if these millage renewals pass, residents will see a decrease in the city's millage rate due to statutory millage rollbacks. And you'll also see a further decrease in city millage rates next year due to recently refinanced bonds. In fact, the city millage rate has decreased by 8% since 2015 due to both statutory rollbacks and the refinancing of debt. And we wanted to show you guys, just take a look at an average tax bill comparison. Before the Great Recession in 2008, the average Oak Park homeowner who lived here in 2008 and still lives in the same house now, actually paid more in taxes than they would today. And what this average bill comparison is depicting is the average taxable value of homes in 2008, which was more than the average taxable value today. which is then multiplied by the millage rate in each of those years. And this millage rate includes not just the city millage rate, but all other taxing jurisdictions, so the schools, the county, etc. And the reason for this difference in the tax bill is kind of nuanced, but the main reason is that, like we said before, the average taxable value of a house today is much less than it was in 2008, even if your market value has bounced back, and also the steady decrease of the city's millage rate over the past 5 years. So in summary, the renewal of these millages will mean a continued revenue source for 3 important service areas of the city at no tax increase to the residents. And if the millages are not renewed, it would result in a revenue loss of approximately $1 million a year. So to wrap it up, no matter how you decide to vote, we just want to remind you to all vote on Election Day, which is Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. All of our precincts will be open from 7 to 8, and we'll be putting in safety precautions, social distancing, etc. But also remember that anyone can now vote absentee. And in order to receive an absentee ballot, if you haven't already, you must be registered to vote. To request an absentee ballot or to register to vote, you can visit the city's website at www.oakparkmi.gov. There you'll find election information under, if you go to city departments, and you'll see city clerk. And once you click on city clerk, you'll see election information. Or you can also call our city clerk's office at 248-691-7544. And at this point, if anybody has any questions, we'll allow the raising of the hand. If anybody calls in, we'll unmute you to ask questions as well. But we've got more than one town hall. We'll have 3 more after these, so the dates are above. Or I'm sorry, the dates are on the presentation here. Be on the lookout for Facebook posts. We've also sent out a postcard mailer that should be in the mailboxes of all residents this week. We're going to be sending out a second informational mailer towards the end of the week. Towards the end of the month. We also have a page on the city website that's dedicated to the renewals. It's just right there on the front page. And if you want to find the Zoom information for each of these town halls, you can find it on the webpage. And you can also find it in our Facebook. So at this point, we'll open it up for any questions or comments. And again, if we'll use the raise your hand feature, and if anyone has problems with that, if you go to participants on the bottom of your screen, if you click that on the right-hand corner, you should see an option to raise your hand.
Crystal, I have a question.
Yeah.
It's okay to talk?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just got my property tax for the summer, and I was curious, you're not allowed to put anything about elections, like the millage renewals, in that mailing as a way of information besides what you're doing?
Are you asking? We can, and we did the last time, I think. This time, though, we opted to mail a postcard instead.
Oh, I just wondered why, since it was going out to every resident in the city, you didn't use that as an option.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
We could have done it that way. We just, we did that 2 years ago when we had millage renewals, and I don't know if city manager wants to speak to this at all, but we just kind of opted this time for doing a postcard just because we thought it would actually get more recognition, that it would be read more. So if you haven't received it yet, you should be getting it in the mail this week.
And then my other question is, are you doing anything with the Oak Park businesses to promote, passing the millages, and like putting something in their windows since that's another way of getting that information out to the residents and whatnot?
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. We do have flyers, so we've created flyers. You can find those now around City Hall and other public safety and whatnot. And also the library, with every book checkout, I believe, is putting the flyer in there. But that's not a bad idea. We could ask businesses if they'd be willing to have the flyers out for informational purposes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Crystal, any other questions, anybody? I see we have Councilmember Weiss and our Mayor Pro Tem Carolyn Burns have joined us.
Hello.
Hello, everybody.
How's everybody doing?
Very good.
Good. Good to see you all.
You as well.
You will all have the luxury of hearing this presentation all over again in about an hour.
We got the sneak preview.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think, or is it on the call right now from the public? Is it just, looks like there's 3 people. So Mark and Cheryl?
4.
Or 4,
As well.
okay.
And then I see Caitlin Mitchell.
Yeah, Caitlin Mitchell just joined us and she missed the presentation. So Caitlin, I'm not sure if you had any specific questions or want to tune into a future town hall, but you can unmute yourself and speak if you'd like.
Hi, I'm just observing today. Thank you.
Okay. And we do have 3 more town halls. And we have those on the city website with the Zoom information. We'll also be sharing information on Facebook. You can always go to the city website. We have a dedicated web page now right there on the main page for the millage renewal. So most of the information that you find here, we don't go into as much depth about taxable value and why these millages are important, but there is some information about the millage renewals. Please feel free, if you are so obliged, when you see the Facebook posts, to share them. If you and they're all informative. They're really just to tell people what the millages are for, so people understand when they have their ballot what they're voting for. And remember, a lot of people this week should be receiving, if they've already applied for an absentee ballot, they should be receiving them this week. So many people could be voting this week or next or anytime until the 4th, until August 4th.
I think they were filled out. My mom said she received hers last week.
That's good.
Okay, Crystal.
All right, well, I think we can wrap it up then. And council members will, again, and all of our directors on here will see this all over again in about an hour.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Crystal, really quick before we jump off, I know Caitlin joined late. If she, can you put the information for the council meeting into the chat? So if she wanted to come to the council meeting to get that information, she could as well.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. And like you said, there's going to be one tomorrow too, and for the rest of the week.
Yeah, so if anyone, and this is being recorded right now and live streamed, so this will be shown on the cable channel, just as every town hall that we do about this will. So you can always go back if you have our cable channel, and you can watch it there. And then yeah, we will have 3 more town halls. One is tomorrow at 10:30, I believe. Colton, am I right? Okay, at 10:30. We try to do them at different times just to meet different people's schedules. And then there are 2 more towards the end of the month. So one on the 27th, which I believe is a Monday, and then one on Wednesday, the 29th, I think. And all that information can be found on the city website. So right on the main page, there's a millage renewal button you can click, and all of our Zoom information, all the links are there. And
well, thank you, everybody, for your support. And we'll see you in just a few minutes, staff members and elected officials. Thank you.